Hello, everyone. So, I don't know about you, but I know that I feel a little bit anxious about the tariffs and what that is going to mean for me this year with like food prices, the cost of like everything. So, I can't control what the government does, but what I can control is increasing my vegetable production and possibly increasing my chickens. And if these sort of things are on your mind as well, then here is, I guess, my practical advice for if you're going to do kind of the same plan as I am. Just like a few little housekeeping things. I have my 2-year-old over here. There may be just a few interruptions, but that's sort of life without regular daycare, and we'll still have a good podcast or like live video. So, I guess I want to start this by telling you a story about the last time that I got really nervous about the events in the world and I increased my vegetable production. So, it actually wasn't 2020. I was well on my way to having a regular vegetable garden in 2020. It was, I believe, in 2016, maybe it was 2018, sometime around there. And I remember it was the time of the year that I was starting my tomato seedlings. And I think I had initially only planned maybe at about like 30 or 40 tomato seedlings, which is still a lot. But oh, my hair is so weird. Okay, sorry. Um, yeah, I'd only planned about that many tomatoes because we were still at our garden in the city and we just really didn't have the space. But I remember my husband and I were listening to the news as I was seeding these little tomatoes. And at the end of whatever we were listening to, he looks at me and he's like, "You better plant all those tomatoes that are in the seed packet." And so I did, and I think we ended up with like 120 or 160 tomato seedlings. It was absolutely ridiculous. We did give them to other people and put some out here at the acreage because his mom was still living here. But it just goes to show that when things are crazy in the world, it's like the first thing we think of is, okay, how can we secure our food? So I feel like that happened then. And then I also felt that way a bit in 2020. And as I said, we were already well on our way. So like it wasn't as like, oh no, we have to get all the things. And then again, I am feeling that way right now. So just the lessons I've learned in the previous experiences, and even as we've gotten chickens or like trying to source our fruit because our orchard just does not want to seem to grow. So I wanted to give you some like really practical things if you're also thinking of bumping up your production with your vegetables and your chickens. So let's talk about the vegetables first. The first thing you must know if you are going to grow a lot of vegetables is that your soil is king. Your soil health is going to determine how well those vegetables are going to do. I mean, there's other factors too, right? Of course, we don't want to plant our vegetable garden in a bunch of shade. And if it's a drought year, like that's also going to impact it. But just right out of the gate, you don't have the good soil. Your vegetables are not going to do well. If you are used to growing a lot of flowers, I find that your flowers are a lot more forgiving of some poor soil conditions. Really, vegetables are not. I actually can't think of a single vegetable that thrives in poor soil. So, how are you going to amend your soil? Because chances are maybe you don't have the budget to buy in a whole truckload of compost or manure or whatever it is. So, like, what can you do with what you have? Best solution is if you did not rake up your leaves this fall, you're going to rake up your leaves. As soon as everything melts, you're going to throw as much as you can on your garden. No matter if you have sandy soil or clay soil, those leaves are going to help. If you aren't composting, start composting right now. Unless your garden is like right beside your house or you have like severe issues with mice or something, what I actually recommend is taking your household compost and just throw it directly on your garden. That's what me and my mom have done for a long time. I don't do that anymore now. I feel like a garden is too huge. But when I had a city-sized garden, just taking whatever orange peels or potato peels or any sort of compost from your kitchen, just throw it directly in your garden. It's going to look gross when the snow melts. Okay. That's like the trade off. But if you do the tilling method, once you till that into your soil, that's all going to decompose in about 2 weeks, most of it. If you don't till, then what you're going to do is, yes, it's going to look gross, but you're just going to put your leaves or your mulch directly on top of that. Or if you have like a garden claw, that's the thing that I love to use. If you are any sort of a fan of this channel, you will have definitely seen me use the garden claw. Garden claw doesn't exist anymore, but you can buy something similar to it. Yeah, and then you just work that in. And again, it'll decompose in about 2 weeks and you are good to go. Okay, I'm just going to check my notes here. Um, Another thing when you're trying to like source all of these amendments and things on a large scale is sometimes it feels like, where do you get them? So, if you have the funds to get them from a landscaping company, check out the landscaping companies in your areas, give them a phone call, message them on their website, and just ask if they have like a triple mix soil. If you need to start from scratch, a triple mix soil is the way to go. It'll have a combination of soil and compost, and not sure what the other thing is. Sorry, guys, I don't buy it that often. But that's what you want to look for. If they sell like outright compost, fantastic. Get that from them. Many municipalities will have free compost that's sort of like attached to their dump. So back when I lived in Humboldt, I was a smaller city. You could just go to the dump and there was a pile of compost and you could just grab that compost for free. Here, I live outside of Saskatoon. They have a similar program. It's not attached to the dump, it's in its own separate compost depot. And I think starting in late April or May, you can usually go there, you can get that compost. Now, I don't know what your compost situation is going to be like in every single municipality in place. But what I can tell you is that if you are near to Saskatoon, that compost gets really hydrophobic really fast. It is sort of frustrating. But again, if you have more time than money, it's worth it to go and get the free compost. But then again, you also have to factor in driving. So the reason why we don't get the free compost anymore is because our compost depot is way on the other side of the city. It's essentially like a 45-minute drive. So when you factor in the gas, the labor, the whatever, if I can afford to get in compost or use other things, I will and find something on this side of the city. The other thing too is like use Facebook groups. Use those community Facebook groups. And just if you don't know a farmer to get like straw from, or if you want to get manure on bulk or whatever, just ask on your Facebook group, hey, do you know a guy? Someone will answer, you'll get hooked up. But just don't be like an island to yourself thinking, oh, I don't know anybody. I'm hooped. You're not hooped. Okay. Another amendment like sheep's wool. See if there are any farmers that are shearing their sheeps and they're willing to sell you the extra wool that's like not good for anything else. That's a great soil amendment. And especially if you have sandy soil or soil that like really struggles to hold in the moisture, that's another good one. Okay. The next thing is you're going to want to think about your water. If you live someplace where like you get a lot of rain and water isn't really an issue, then like you can just tune this next little section out. But if you're in a prairie location or someplace else where the climate is really dry and water is an issue, if you have money to spend, this is where you want to spend it. You want to get a rainwater collection system going. um, I'm gonna try and do some videos about what we have. We like got those big giant, the containers that are clear and they have the metal around them. Like that's what we're investing in. And we're gonna try to keep getting more of those, but we've got two for now. And so we're gonna set that up because we're on city water. Water's expensive. Even if you're on well water, your water might not be good for gardening. So you'll have to get a test you don't know. And like don't just automatically assume that buying a well or digging a well is going to be like the solution. Wells are expensive. Digging that all up is expensive. So, really, probably the cheapest thing you can do is to spend some money and invest in some sort of water collection system so that you're not having to always buy water from the city. Now, if you're just doing a super small garden, maybe the extra cost of the city water isn't going to be that much. But for the scale I'm at, it really adds up. So, that's what I want to say about that. Okay, next question people will have is what should you plant? So the advice always is plant what you're going to eat. So if your family really likes tomato sauce, you're going to plant tomatoes. If your family likes potatoes, plant, and potatoes is so beginner friendly, guys. Like if you do nothing else, just plant some potatoes. Um, if your family say doesn't like turnips, don't waste your money buying those seeds. It's okay. Like, it's fine to buy one or two new vegetable things that you just like maybe want to try or look fun. But for the most part, just stick to the things that are actually going to make a difference in your family's budget. As for how much, it's so hard. Every family will use more of one vegetable than the other. So I guess I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't really have any answers to the how much question. My answer for how much is more going to be in like the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which is the problems with harvesting and processing. So when you're figuring out how many plants you want to get into, you have to think, when are these plants coming into harvest? And what am I personally doing at that point in time? So, for example, I will grow tons and tons of tomatoes. And for the last 3 years, without fail, these tomatoes ripen. It's September, and I'm feeling super overwhelmed. Kids are going back to school. And do I process them? No. Now, hopefully, this year, and when I run into that same problem, I'm going to have enough mental capacity to just stick them in bags and stick them in the freezer. That's the good solution. But for the last couple of years with babies and postpartum depression, I've just kind of let them rot, or I fed them to the pigs, or I fed them to the chickens. And like that was not the point of the tomatoes. The point of the tomatoes was to feed my family. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Same thing with beans and peas. Those usually come into harvest sometime in mid-July. For me, that's not a problem. I'm home. But for many of you, if you're going camping, if you're out at the lake for 3 weeks, that's not going to work out. So then you might want to skip those crops. So I know if you're brand new to this is really hard to like think ahead and see these problems coming. So do your best and then take notes for next year. Put them in your garden planner and you will figure it out for yourself. Um, so that all said, if you're thinking about this and you're feeling really overwhelmed and you're like, I don't know if I can actually bump up my vegetable production. I don't know if I can get all these amendments sorted and whatever. I would say the best solution then is to just shop at a farmer's market. Like it's okay. When I was regular, oh, sorry, I just have to fix the shows for this little one here. There you go. There's your Bluey. Um, Right. So there was a time when I went to this farmer's market like every single Saturday and I got most of our family's vegetables because I wasn't really growing a ton of vegetables on my own. And I actually found that the prices were quite similar to the grocery store. Sometimes they were a little more expensive, sometimes they were actually cheaper. So I think if the prices of the grocery store are going to rise, I feel like our farmers market is finally going to feel quite affordable. So I would plan on shopping at your farmers market. This is also the time when you can get purchase CSAs. So if you're in a city yard and you know that you only have limited space, you're probably not going to meet your family's needs for what you could grow. Try to get a share in a CSA. At the very least, even if you just get a half share, it'll introduce you to a ton of different vegetables that you might not have eaten or thought to grow yourself. So it's a great way to like window shop in a sense, without a huge commitment. And then you're also supporting a farmer. So that's a good thing too. All right. The next thing we're going to talk about is fruit. So I guess this discussion might not apply to my American viewers as much as my Canadian viewers, and it's going to depend what region you're in, right? But as a prairie person, I'm thinking about like if the tariffs are high on fruit, we import so much of our fruit. If we're importing from BC or Ontario, that's not so bad. But like the citrus in the winter, that's probably now out. So it's going to be extra important to just like make sure I have my own fruit that I've already preserved. Sorry, she's just wanting to sit on me. There you go, honey. Um, so like yes, I'm obviously not going to grow oranges and lemons. If you have a south facing window though, or like some sort of year round greenhouse situation and you can buy a citrus plant, you definitely should. Like it's a very fun experience. But I'm going to say for most of us watching this video, that is probably not an option. So what you're going to do this year is you're going to be really good about trying to source whatever fruit you can, freezing it, canning it, whatever you can, so that in the winter you have some options for fruit. So that means rhubarb is definitely the easiest. Even if you don't have a rhubarb plant, everybody has a rhubarb plant. You can find someone with a rhubarb plant and grab that and make some compotes and jams from it. Crab apples are another one that's really easy. A lot of communities, if you don't already have your own fruit trees or know of places to go, they will have like a group called Out of Your Tree or Free Fruit or whatever. So it's where people who have fruit trees in the yard and don't want them, don't know what to do with them. When those things harvest, they post on these groups and say, hey, I have these crab apples. Does anyone want them? And then you can go for free and you can pick them. So that is always a really, really good option. Um, And, like, I don't know again how it's like everywhere, but here, there's a place that does cherries. There's a couple places that do Saskatoon berries. There's places that do raspberries. So there are places, and I guess this year I'm gonna be a lot more intentional about hitting them up. In my case, with her still being 2, I feel like the amount of canning I'm gonna do is probably gonna be kinda minimal. So my plan is just to make sure I have a freezer cleared out and to just freeze things as they come because that's just the fastest. All right, let us move on to chickens. So, the first thing I want to say if you're thinking about getting chickens is that birds are cheap, infrastructure is not. And that is a lesson we have so learned the hard way, more with the pigs that we got than the chickens. But it's really frustrating because you might see a thing of eggs advertised, like hatching eggs advertised for maybe $20 or $30. And you're thinking, wow, $30 to get into chickens? That is so cheap. No, it's not, because do you have an incubator? A good quality incubator is probably costing you about $300. You can find some for cheaper, but you probably want that $300 incubator. um, so okay, that's just to get them to life. Then you need, the feed. You need the feeder, you need the waterer, you need the little indoor pen because guess what? They can't go outside by themselves. If it's a different thing, if you already have chickens and you're letting your mama hens do the hatching, they're fine. But if there's no mama hen, they're not fine. So you're going to need that heat plate. Um, and then once you need to move them outside, what building are they going to? Do you have some sort of a building, a shed, a something that they can go to? Are you able to run electricity to that shed? Because they're still going to need that heat panel, that heat lamp, that something. Um, so just know that you need to have those things sorted out before you go buy that $30 carton of hatching eggs or buy those sweet little chicks from the chicken store. And I know they're so tempting, right? And so cute, but they grow up and they eat food. So do make sure you have those things in place. I would also recommend just getting basic production birds if you're going to get into chickens. So I just call them like the basic white and the basic brown. Whatever those birds are, wherever you live, just start with those. The brown ones are a little more nicely tempered. So if you have kids, I would just maybe only stick to the browns. If they're a little older, get the whites and the browns or just whites. Whatever is fine. I was very guilty about I wanted all of the pretty eggs and the pretty colors, and so I just like got all the fancy birds. I definitely did. It's cheaper to hatch them and get barnyard mixes, so that's what I did. But once those chickens grew up, I was like, oh no! Every time it gets cold, they're the first not to lay. In the spring, it's usually the old reliable ones that are like the first to start laying again, or through the winter, those old reliable varieties they'll keep laying a little bit more consistently. So again, if you're getting chickens not for like just enjoyment and you want them for the eggs for yourself or your families, stick to the 2 basic varieties for now. And once you have that, you can always add like whatever. Okay, let's see. Also, if you're brand new to chickens, chickens take 5 months to lay. Um, so take that into consideration. Just because you bought that $30 hatching thing doesn't mean you're going to have eggs right away. It is 5 months later, and it's not guaranteed 5 months. Sometimes it's 6 months. Occasionally you get lucky and it's 4, but you just don't know that. Okay, and then let's see. Oh, how many chickens do you need for your family? So again, it can vary on how many eggs your family eats, how big your family is, or if it's just you. But what I've found for our family of 6, so 2 adults, 4 kids, is I think about 12 to 15 laying hens would be perfect for us. So that allows us to have eggs for breakfast. Now, not everybody eats eggs for breakfast, only some of us do, and we don't do it every day. But that also allows, I like to do a lot of baking, and lately, because I feel like there's not many places to trim in our grocery bill, the only place I feel I can trim is I'm trying to make most of my own bread. And no, I actually don't do sourdough. I just do plain bread. Like whatever, plain bread it is. Everybody likes it. They eat it. It's great. And I feel like I would kill a sourdough starter. Let's be real. So I do that, and then I also make everybody's treats for their lunch kits. So the cookies, the granola bars, or whatever. I do occasionally buy them when I'm in a bind, but now I just say like, no, we are making them because it's cheaper. And honestly, that's our family time. All of my kids really love to help bake. So, there's some positives to that. Okay, then if that's about 12 to 15 laying hens for a family of 6, then you can kinda scale that down or up if you need to, depending on the size of your family. And then if you feel like you have eggs for breakfast every day, then I would maybe add another chicken or 2 to that. Okay, last thing about chickens, then we're almost done here, is that if you do have all those things ready for chickens, chickens are actually really easy to take care of. For the most part, you go in, you make sure they have their food, their water, nobody's having like issues, I mean, they can sometimes get mites and things, but I find most of the time it's pretty easy and enjoyable. Make sure their bedding is clean. We do the deep litter method, so we just keep adding the bedding. I only clean out their coop about twice a year. It is a big, terrible job, but you know what? It's okay. I am okay with it being a big, terrible job because I use all of their coop shavings directly on my garden. Now, if I was a better person, I would let them sit for a year. But what I found works really well, especially with my sandy soil, is I take all of those shavings, the poop, whatever, and I put that directly on whatever part of my garden is doing the worst. And then I plant my pumpkins there. And so I feel like that's worked out really well for me, and I've gotten better pumpkin production, and then the next year, when I go to garden in that plot, I feel like it's at about the same level of fertility as everything else, which, let's be real, is not fantastic. I'm still struggling with my soil, but we are getting there. The other thing I love about chickens is I let mine free range. And so this is also how I help with the cost of feed is by letting them free range. They're having grass, they're having ticks, they're having grasshoppers, they're having whatever bugs. They still do eat feed, of course, but not as much as they would if I would have them in. Now, of course, there's consequences to that. It means that they do destroy things in my garden. I'm getting better at knowing how to protect my garden so that they're not destroying as much. And we have deaths every year. And we have deaths because, foxes get them, coyotes get them. But for the most part, I've learned that as long as I keep them in their coop until around lunch, and then I will let them out. And then at nighttime, that's the other time when predators seem to like really be near. So me and the kids and Michael, if he's home, we all go outside while the sun is setting. We're super loud. We have dance parties. They jump on the trampoline or whatever. And that is enough to just scare the predators away until all the chickens have come inside. We actually like make a thing out of it and we call it chicken watch. And again, it's very enjoyable and we've all kind of come to love it. So I hope that's given you a lot to think about and that it's helpful. If you're new here, you've just found me, maybe a friend shared this with you, or it's just popped up in the algorithm. My website is shiftingroots.com. There is so much cold climate gardening information on there. It's all free. It helps me out because I get ad income from just you scrolling. So that is awesome. If you're looking for like more dedicated stuff, all of my gardening books are on Amazon. I've tried to keep them at fairly reasonable prices. The only one that's expensive really is the frost-proof flower garden. But I've decided because, with the tariffs and I think how everyone's feeling, we are going to do a little bit of the frost-proof flower garden together, but it's going to be something that's not in the book. It's going to be with vegetables. So we are going to grow, I guess I have to find Brussels sprout seeds, but like Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, peas, like all of sort of the cold frost-proof vegetables. We're going to grow them in a way that most people don't, but you will get so much better results. And it's going to just change your world if in a cold climate. The only trade off is you're going to plant them out in April and it's probably going to snow and you're going to feel like you're crazy and you're going to lose everything, but you're not. It's going to be okay. I also have garden planners. Again, everything's either on Amazon or my website. Just search, if you're going on Amazon, search Kristen Rainey, everything will pop up. But I will read through your comments. I hope you're having a good day. I know it's such a weird and strange time and we're just all feeling really uncertain. So I hope this has helped in some small way and I appreciate you guys being here. I also appreciate you extra just because I feel like my life is so chaotic with trying to be on YouTube and struggling to find a way that I can be consistent with like little people and family life and non-consistent daycare. So thanks again. And yeah. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye bye.